Hi BookTube, it's Amy. At the last minute today, I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and do the reading rush. I've gotten a little bit excited about it, watching other people's TBRs and just hearing people talk about what they plan to read. And as I've never actually followed through with attempting to take part in a readathon, I thought it would be something fun to try, and I don't really have a lot going on in this upcoming week. So it seems like the perfect excuse to just dive in and do some serious reading. So in the last hour or so, I've created an account on the Reading Rush website, and I've selected the books that I'm going to be reading over the next week. So the Reading Rush starts on July 22nd, so I guess that means that a lot of people elsewhere in the world have already started. It's only July 21st here, so I'll be starting tomorrow. I know technically the Reading Rush starts at midnight, but I will not be up at midnight. I will be fast asleep at midnight as I get up about 5:45 every morning for work. So I'll be starting my reading briefly on the 10-minute or so bus ride I have on the way in to work. And I'll be doing some reading on my lunch break and then reading after work, of course. And that'll be pretty much how most of my week goes up until Saturday and next Sunday. But so I've got a stack of books here. And the first prompt, there's 7 prompts, but you don't have to read 7 books. The first prompt here is to read a book with purple on the cover. And so it seemed like the perfect moment to pick up Lisa of Lambeth by W. Somerset Maugham. And this is one that I attempted to start reading last week. I took it to work with me, I read the first 3 or 4 pages, and then I got to chatting with a colleague over lunch when I had started reading, and I didn't read any of it and set it aside, and ended up coming home and picking up something else and sort of setting this aside. So I started it, but I didn't really start it because I don't recall much about it. But this also works for one of the other prompts. One of the other prompts asks to read the first book by an author, and this is Maugham's first published novel. It's a short little novel about an impoverished woman living in a certain neighborhood, I guess, and it's inspired by his days as a medical student in the East End of London, I guess. The back says, into the East End of the 90s came a young medical student. From this experience of a life that was hard, unpredictable, and sordid, emerged one of the greatest novelists of the century. And this is his first novel, the story of strong-willed Lisa, who overstepped the conventions of the world. So this is one that tells us more about who W. Somerset Maugham was as an author rather than about the novel itself, but it does have purple on the cover, and it is his first novel. So that covers 2 of the prompts here. So the second prompt asks to read a book in the same spot the entire time. And this was clarified as you can either read it in one sitting, or you can read like in a single physical spot. So you can read an hour, and say if I sat in this chair, which I wouldn't because it's not that comfortable for reading, but if I sat in this chair for an hour and began the book I've selected, Colonel Chabert by Honoré de Balzac, translated by Carol Cosman. If I sat here and read this Balzac, I don't know whether to call it a novel or not, maybe it's a novella, it's very short. This is a library book. I borrowed it from the library. First time I've actually gone to the library in about 6 months. But the whole idea is that if I wanted to read this in one place, I would perhaps read 30 minutes in this chair, and then I go off and do something else, and perhaps I come back the next day and read another 30 minutes in this chair and finish it, and I could say that I read this book in the same spot. Yeah, I'm not sure what this one is about, but I do like Balzac. The back says that Chabert is among Balzac's most tragic heroes, a decorated Napoleonic War veteran believed to have been killed in battle. Severely disfigured, the colonel returns to Paris as if risen from the grave, where he finds his wife remarried, his pension gone, and his name linked nostalgically to the faded days of empire. Employing a young lawyer named Derville, Chabert finds an ally to negotiate the labyrinth system of restoration justice. But as Derville plays the game of law and intrigue, we discover by Balzac himself that the most post-revolutionary politics were plagued with corruption. So that sounds like a good one. Then the next prompt here is to read a book that you meant to read last year. So I selected one at random off my shelf that I'm interested in diving in. And this is one that I picked up secondhand last year. It's Portrait in Brownstone by Louis Auchincloss. One that I picked up quite randomly at the thrift store. The title was familiar to me, but I'm not familiar with the author. And this is, of course, a Dell cheap little pocket paperback reprint of the work. The back says that Portrait in Brownstone has insight, deftness, and brilliance that moves from the early years of the century through a maze of feuds, loves, power struggles, and cross currents of generations. A finely wrought and polished book, intimate, human, interesting. That's from the Boston Herald, and there is another quote here from the Atlantic Monthly. So this is a moment where we're not being told what the book is about, but rather how great people think it is. But it's one that has been on my shelf for a while. I meant to read it last year when I first got it, and I didn't. So I'll hope to get to it this week. We'll see how many of these books I actually manage to get read. I will be setting aside my Proust to do this reading rush, because obviously if I try to do Proust for one of these, I will spend the entire week just reading that one book and probably not even finish it, just because of the nature of Proust and how dense his writing really is, and how long as well. So the next prompt here, an author's first book, as I said, Lisa of Lambeth is the one I'm using for that. The next prompt, read a book with a non-human main character. So I struggled thinking of this for a bit because I don't read anything that really borders on fantasy or sci-fi. But then I recalled that I had a book that I had also bought at a thrift store last year, 15 Dogs by Andre Alexis. And this was a Scotiabank Giller Prize finalist, and so it made the rounds here in Canada a couple years back when it first came out. As you can see, I paid $1.59 for it, so not a huge investment, but it's been sitting on my shelf ever since. And it appears that sort of the main characters here are a group of dogs. It appears that the gods Hermes and Apollo decide to grant human consciousness and language to a group of dogs overnighting at a Toronto veterinarian clinic. And then they're capable of complex thought. And the pack is torn between those who resist the new ways of thinking and those who embrace the old ways of thinking. And the gods watch from above as the dogs venture into a new and unfamiliar world, as they become divided among themselves and how they struggle with new thoughts and feelings. I've heard that some people love this and some people think that it's one of the worst and stupidest things they've ever read, but I'm going to give it a try. So the next prompt here is to pick a book that has 5 or more words in the title. And that's harder than you would think, to come up with a book with 5 or more words in the title. Because a lot of books seem to be between 3 and 4 words. And so I dug on my shelves and I found a biography that I picked up last year. Life and Letters of Gustave Flaubert by, the author's name is Tarver. Let me just double check the full name of the author before I go and commit myself to pronouncing their name. Tarver. Come on, where's the title page? I've lost the title page here. John Charles Tarver. And this is obviously an older book. I'm not sure when it was published. I'm looking at the date in Roman numerals here, which my Roman numerals don't really go past 20, so there's that. This is something that I had purchased secondhand, and it's a library discard, and I can see in the front here that I had gone so far as to announce that I was reading this in June 2018. And it looks as though I got 68 pages in last June, and then for whatever reason I stopped and I never continued. Oh, and here's a bookmark There's a bookmark in here for the Elora Curling Club book sale in Elora, Ontario. That was in May of this year, and obviously I missed that. That used to be my favorite book sale back when I lived back in the Elora area. It was a couple towns over from where I grew up, and so I would go with my mom and sister almost every year to stock up on great used books. But this is obviously a biography of Gustave Flaubert, and if I remember right, the author Tarver was building the biography largely through Flaubert's correspondence and through his own writing. So he wasn't looking a lot to, third-party sources, and that's even reflected in the subtitle here. Gustave Flaubert, seen in his works and correspondence. So I'll read that as the one with more than 5 words in the title, because we've got 6 words in the title, so that does quite well for that. And then the final prompt 7, is to read and watch a book to movie adaptation. And there are many ones I could have chosen, but I've been wanting to read, since I picked it up the other week, I've been wanting to read W. Somerset Maugham's The Moon and Sixpence, which is, I guess, loosely based on the life of the artist Gauguin. And although Maugham's character is generally taken to be Gauguin, it's not like a biographical work by any means. It's just loosely based on his life. And it's interesting too, because a couple weeks ago I did see the Gauguin Portraits exhibition at the Canadian Gallery here in Ottawa. So it's rather timely that I should discover the existence of that author just as I'm going into reading a book that's loosely based on his life for the first time. And someone did warn me in the comments of my video, I think when I showed off this book for the first time, or talked about it at some point, not to take the portrait of Gauguin as displayed in this book as truth, as it would color reality, because of course it's not actually him, it's just loosely based on Maugham's perception of Gauguin. And I think I mentioned before that I was quite pleased with this edition here. It's an Everyman modern library edition, rather. It's a modern library edition, and I'm pleased because the dust jacket is in excellent condition. So often, by the time you find one of these modern library editions in the used bookshops, the dust jackets are gone, and you're just getting this. Or if there is a dust jacket, it's torn in half or has holes in it. But so this is a book that was originally published in 1919, and I'm not entirely sure when this reprinting is from, but I would expect possibly the 1950s or 60s. Possibly earlier. I don't think it's from the 40s, given what good condition it's in, so it might be 50s or 60s here. So that's my final selection. I've got a good stack of books here, and we shall see if I actually manage to read all of these this week. It is a challenge, and I'm looking forward to watching people's videos and chatting with them over the course of the reading rush. As I said in the past, I have shied away from doing readathons, or I guess I would call them organized booktube activities, because I don't really trust myself to follow through and to find the time to actually do these things. And of course, it's I would say it would be a little bit of a letdown and a little bit embarrassing almost to continually commit myself to things that I don't follow through on. But that's that. I promise to follow through on it this time. I promise to actually do the reading rush, not to drop it midway. I have announced that in the past that I was going to take part in a few organized things, and I think most of the time I ended up realizing when I'm not following through, going to my channel and just discreetly deleting my video where I announce that I'm joining or putting it on private. Not sure why. I don't think it's really anything to be intensely embarrassed or ashamed of, that I didn't follow through on a read-along or a readathon or something of that sort. Because we all have our real lives, we all get busy, and booktube is for fun, right? And so there shouldn't really be any pressure, but long story short, I decided that this time I would jump in here. If you're taking part in the reading rush, let me know in the comments below what you're reading and whether or not you've started in your time zone yet. I'm not sure exactly what people usually do through the reading rush. I was thinking I might end up doing a daily vlog of sorts, not something to be posted every day of this week, but just taking, some vlog footage of myself reading and perhaps wrapping it all up into a video at the end of this readathon, just to show you, how it went. I think in the years past I've seen other people do that, so that might be something fun for me to do as well. I hope you're all having a lovely Sunday or Monday, wherever you are.